Hello again. George Freestone back with episode number 33 of our baseball journey, the story of my wife Carol and my visits to all 30 major league ballparks that were current, at least at the time that we took the tour, and maybe a few obsolete parks too. Today's story finds us in Denver, where we were to see the Mets play the Rockies with my cap. And for my Zoom background, I have chosen, rather than a view of the ballpark or whatever, a view of a player. And I chose Marcus Stroman, who is the Mets starting pitcher for the game. And it looks to me, as Carol and I were sitting just a couple of rows back from first base, that Marcus had just turned and was about to throw to first base to try and hold a runner on. So, with that, I am going to share my computer screen, maximize the slide, and move me. Okay, we have a busy slide, but we have a lot to tell in this story. So, please remember, this is the wrap up of our 6 ballpark 2,300 road trip miles visit to our western states, where we started in San Francisco to see a game in Oakland, drove down the coast, saw 2 games in Los Angeles for the Angels and the Dodgers, then on to see the Padres in San Diego, drove there to Phoenix to see the Diamondbacks. And finally, we wrapped it up with this journey from Phoenix to Denver. But since that journey is extensive, we decided to break it up into 2 days worth of travel because that gave us a chance to see a couple of neat things along the way, too. The first half of the journey, as the first bullet indicates, was from Phoenix to Albuquerque, New Mexico. Along the way, we stopped in 2 locations. We spent just a brief amount of time taking a couple of pictures or whatever at Sedona here in Arizona, and wonderful rock structures. I have quite a collection of photos that you can see one of here, but you can see many more of at this photo album as well. That is a comprehensive photo album for all of the photos that got us to Denver, as well as then once we were there for each of the days of the visit and all the things that we see that you see highlighted here in this slide. But we stopped first at Sedona, and then we drove on to near Winslow, Arizona, from the Eagles song Take It Easy, standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona. We actually ate at a Subway, I think, that was in a Walmart, and this sign, the Winslow Bulldogs, was from that particular either Walmart or Subway, I forget, but drove a little further, and then we got to Meteor Crater, and Meteor Crater is just a very impressive hole in the ground. I think 55,000 years ago, a meteor struck the Earth and dug out that crater. I'm glad I was not there at that time. They have a wonderful museum. They also have a walkway around part of the rim of that crater, and you can see the guardrails or whatever right here. So we saw the museum, and we also took in, they had a older car show, and you can see from the 50s, I believe, a well-maintained, and I'm not quite sure what it is, but it looks GM-ish to me. So we'll leave it with that. But we saw both some older cars as well as some wonderful architecture geographic architecture, that is, with Cydonia and with Meteor Crater. Another thing that I'll point out is along I-40, which is a key east-west interstate. For a long part of the journey, it paralleled railroad tracks, and we ran into countless BNSF, which I think is Burlington Northern Santa Fe, East-West Railroad. And my wife took several shots while we were moving, and one of them is right there. The other thing that we did, and this highlights the fact that US Route 66 either parallels or actually shares the road designation with Interstate 40. But we stopped at Gallup, New Mexico for a brief stop there at a little bit of a museum that they had all about everything you wanted to know about Gallup, New Mexico, but we're afraid to ask. So we saw those two things. We got to Albuquerque and we just really had a busy day of travel and sightseeing. So we, after a meal, rested up for the second half of the journey. And this was an important second half because the 444 miles we needed to cover so that we could be ready for a night game at Coors Field that night. The game that we were going to see that we had tickets for was actually that first day of our arrival in Denver. So we needed to make sure that we had enough time to get there comfortably, and we did. So in this game, that again, the box score you can find by clicking on this box in the slides, and a link for the slides is in the description for the playlist for all these videos. So you can copy and paste that and go directly to the slides. And then once you have that, these links are active, and that's very helpful as well. But you can see in the box score that my Mets held their own, and as the bullet says, clobbered the Rockies 6-1. Marcus Stroman, the guy behind me in my image here in Zoom, is he went 7 innings. Strong pitching. I think he only gave up like 4 hits. And so it was a good day for the Mets pitching that day. It was also a good day for Pete Alonso. And here you can see him both playing first base and hitting right here. Again, we had pretty good seats right off first base. Pete hit his 48th home run of 2019 at Coors Field that night. Now, eventually, he ended the season with 53 home runs. And I think there were 2 other Met home runs that night as well. Brandon Nimmo had one of them. And I have a couple of other pictures from the ballpark here. I have this panoramic view that shows you just where we were seat-wise and how close we were to the dugout and to the field, which was great. The other player that I have in an image here is Daniel Murphy. And for those of you who know about Daniel Murphy, he spent, I think, a dozen or so years with the Mets before he moved on to a couple of other teams, being the Nationals, the Cubs, and eventually then the Rockies. And you can see I try to include his generation of different numbers that he was wearing. He started off being number 28 when he was with the Mets. Now I have quite a story about what I skipped over in this bullet. One of my favorite historians is Doris Kearns Goodrin, and she grew up in Rockville Center, Long Island, New York. Not only that, she was influenced heavily by her father to love baseball, number one, and be a very active Brooklyn Dodger fan. Well, she wrote about that experience in this book, which I was reading during this visit, during this road trip. It's Wait Till Next Year. And it talks about the Brooklyn Dodgers as she was growing up and the struggles that they had versus the Yankees and the New York Giants at the time, in terms of trying to take it all and win the World Series. Hence the title, Wait Till Next Year. Well, what the story is all about is this brick that you see right next to the book that I've indicated there. And this brick is in memory of her father. Now, Doris, I think, has two sisters, and what they wanted to do, what the girls wanted to do, was honor their father. And so the women got together and they tried to figure out which ballpark they wanted to use to place the brick. Well, they chose Denver rather than what you might think one of the either New York teams of the day or maybe LA because, Brooklyn Dodgers and Doris's affection for them. But instead, they chose Denver because I think one of the sisters lives relatively close to Denver. So I knew that this brick was there because I was reading that particular story that Doris wrote. And I wanted to try and find the brick when we got to Coors Field. And here's a great picture of the facade of Coors Field. But we got to the park early, even early after a fairly extensive journey from Albuquerque the night before. But we got there, and as soon as we could get into the park, um, we asked the information desk, is there any inventory or geographic guide to where to find a particular brick? And the person at the information center, well, there is. It's your lucky day. So at that desk, they pointed us to the general area where Doris's brick was with her sisters. And we found it, took several pictures of it, and one of them is right there. A very nice tribute from the women to their father. I do recommend that book. It's a wonderful baseball book. It's also a book about faith. It's a quite a good book about a number of different topics. Okay, other things that we've done in Denver. I'm going to switch gears a little bit now. We saw the History Museum in Colorado, the Museum of Art, and the Museum of Art architecture is really quite stunning. This is a night photograph of that particular museum. And inside that museum, they have an exhibit all about light and how light plays such an important part of our world and the art world as well. And one of the things that they also had there was another light room. And here you can see Carol taking a picture where she was obviously standing on some mirrors. And you can see that picture right there um, of Carol at that particular exhibit. We also traveled, because I'm a coin collector, to the Denver Mint. We took a tour of the Denver Mint, and we also went to the National Ballpark Museum. I'll talk more about that a little bit later on, but that was a great ending to this 3 week trip where we saw the six different ballparks. And there are 500 or so pictures just from that National Ballpark Museum right here. So you can enjoy those photos as well. But it really was a great way to end a fantastic trip about the West and our love of baseball and the six different ballparks that we picked off. Now, we also, both Carol and myself, enjoy reading and books quite a bit. So we went to a very interesting bookstore that they have in Denver, the Tattered Cover Bookstore. I think there may be two installations of that. But one of the things that was unique about that bookstore venue was there happened to be a guy out front with a joint who was offering poems for a price. We invested in a poem, and I'm not sure it's really too lucid, but at any rate, and I think I have a photograph of it in the album. It's nothing to write home about, but it is something to talk about. So there you go. Um, okay. Now, what else did we see? Again, I'm a train fan, so we stopped off in Union Station. We had a chance to enjoy viewing the tracks and the trains, but also Union Station, just like Union Station and many of the other locations that we've stopped off at, is a great place for restaurants as well. And I'm pretty sure that we had two or three meals at different restaurants inside Union Station. So it was a very lovely place to enjoy, as this says, great eats. One final thing I'll say about this bullet is this is the convention center for Denver, and they have outside a rather unusual, I think it's called also whimsical, blue bear that appears to be peering into the convention center. And you might say, why a blue bear? Well, when I asked that question, the answer was, well, it was a mistake, the color. But once it was made, they decided to keep it because they liked it. So again, sometimes luck is with you, and sometimes maybe not so much. I had previously eaten at this particular restaurant, um, which is the Buckhorn Exchange, when I was in Denver. And it was notable because it offers armadillo, buffalo, elk, all kinds of interesting food. And Carol and myself enjoyed a wonderful meal there. We had, on the night we were there, we shared rattlesnake, elk, and buffalo. And that particular restaurant at that particular location began operation in 1893. Now, before I talk about the last bullet, I am going to scan and see what I've missed. Well, I missed this. That was from the Colorado History Museum. They had a lovely set of exhibits about dinosaurs, and there's a collection of photographs at the link about that. I forgot to tell you about this guy. This is the mascot for the Rockies. His name is Dinger, and he is a dinosaur. So I overlooked him. Yep, and I captured, or Carol actually took the picture of this sign, but it says you are leaving New Mexico, and I like the hasta la vista, baby, at the tail end, so I included that on this particular slide. Okay, I think we're ready to wrap it up with the discussion about the final bullet here. Now, if you listened to the Phoenix or watched the Phoenix episode, which was episode 32, this being episode 33, you know that when we departed San Diego, one of the first things we did was buy a third suitcase so that we could, as economically as possible, get all of the stuff that we flew out to the West Coast with and all of the stuff that we accumulated on this 3 week road trip back to Philadelphia. And of course, there are weight limits for bags. And what we were doing here, and I was taking a picture rather than helping my wife there, but what we were trying to do is balance the bags all to be within that weight limit so that we could, again, get everything home as economically as possible. Now, one thing that I had to kind of break gently to my wife was in order to get, first of all, first class seats on the way home and economical flights back, we needed to leave at a rather unusual time. Our departure time from Stapleton Airport, Denver Airport, or whatever is was 1:45 in the morning. But we got a great price, Carol. We did. And it allowed us, for example, to take some very beautiful pictures of sunrise as we were coming into Philadelphia here. And this is the where you are image of the flight that you're on so that you can follow the status. So we had a really enjoyable stay in Denver, 3 days or so there. And I will say that episode 33 got us to 28 ballparks down. The only two ballparks that we still had yet to visit were the two in Texas. And we had arranged a visit to Texas, again, a road trip, where we would drive and see some sights to Texas and then see some sights and drive home. But the key is we had everything all set for March of 2020. Now, many of you can immediately think about what was going on in March of 2020, and that is COVID. So we canceled all our plans and we had to take a bit of a hiatus until we could resume our baseball journey and see those final two parks. We'll be back shortly with episode 34, and you can think about how long of a delay it took from September 2019 until we departed for our road trip down to Texas and back. And with that, I will thank you once again for your attention, and I'll look forward to seeing you for the now four remaining episodes.